You know, many organizations have annual dinners around the country. Most of them are called galas or annual meetings. As far as I know, NC Values Coalition is the only organization that calls our annual dinner a celebration. And why do we do that? It's for a very specific reason. That reason is that as Christians, you and I are called not just to go to church on Sundays, not just to read our Bibles in private, but as Jesus commanded, we are to go to all nations, to the whole world, and preach the gospel. That is why we are here, to boldly, publicly, joyfully, and with love proclaim Christ. Jesus is the reason we're here tonight. We're getting ready to have another season that Jesus is the reason for, aren't we? He is the reason we carry on this fight in the legislature, in the courts, and in the public square. He's the reason we are winning victory after victory. And he is the reason we trust that we will be victorious because he has already won the ultimate battle. There is one other person I want to honor and celebrate tonight. Just a few weeks ago, our friend, a young man of God and a leader like no other, Charlie Kirk, was murdered by an assassin's bullet. This was a dark day for our country, and we continue to pray for peace for his wife and his 2 young children. You know, Charlie got started around the same time that NC Values Coalition started. And our fight was and still is one and the same. Every chance Charlie got, he would proclaim the love and the devotion to Jesus Christ. The other thing about Charlie is that he embodied the kind of fearlessness and courage that the scriptures demand of us all. Fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him who can kill both body and soul in hell. That verse has inspired me for a long time. I want to fear God, not man. Thank you, Charlie. Unfortunately, Charlie Kirk's death was not an isolated incident. We have seen over this past year increasing and accelerating political violence across the country. This brings me to the heart of what I want to share with you tonight. I believe this violence and fear-mongering from the left comes from a place of panic because you and I have not just momentum, but traction. In the past 2 years, we have accomplished more than many people ever thought was even possible. Overturning Roe v. Wade, which paved the way for us to limit abortion in North Carolina. Universal opportunity scholarships, protecting women's sports and spaces, and returning Christian values to the heart of our legislative process. This year alone, we successfully passed 5 major pieces of legislation into law. You can see the list of printed materials on your tables. I think I've got one right here. This is it. You can see the list on your table. The legislation we passed into law this year shields parents from losing custody of their children just because they want to raise them in accordance with their biological sex. It prohibits the state from requiring parents to affirm gender identity just to adopt a child. It also threatens to shut down porn sites unless they verify that their models are not minors and that they've consented to the filming. It extends the medical malpractice statute of limitations to 10 years for gender transitioning. It gives parents the right to opt their child out of school curriculum or books that violate their religious beliefs. It defines man and woman according to biology, prohibits gender identity as a substitute for sex, and prohibits girls and boys from sharing overnight sleeping facilities in schools. These are just common sense. And just yesterday, it defunds Planned Parenthood. So thank you to the House. You hear people talk about momentum in a movement, but momentum is simply the force of an object in motion, while traction is the grip that allows it to move forward without slipping. This kind of traction in our movement has the woke left in panic. I believe that is why they are lashing out in violence like a cornered animal. You and I are branded bigots, and we're falsely accused of hate speech when we express the traditional biblical values and ideas that have made America the greatest country on earth. As you saw in our video, getting traction in politics takes more than simply talking about the ideas we want to become law, and no other organization in our state has the ability to do it. Turning an idea into law means actually drafting legislation, going into the legislature and recruiting sponsors and co-sponsors, teaching voters about the bills that we are promoting and inspiring them to contact their legislators to tell them to pass the laws. Lobbying legislators in favor of our bills, which means teaching them about the policies, showing them the level of support they have, and giving them the political cover when they come under fire. As you can see, the strategy works. The tide is turning, and it is thanks to God's grace and your commitment. Now is the time to press our advantage. Now is the time to step out boldly without fear in Charlie Kirk's memory and to save our state and ensure that we never slip. That's why tonight I am pleased to announce for the first time our strategy for the coming years. In the next year, we will launch the Faith, Family, and Freedom Law Center, a legal arm within NC Values that will press our advantage in the courts by identifying and challenging violations of the law that threaten the sanctity of human life, marriage, the family, and the practice of our faith. This year, we have expanded our grassroots recruitment and training efforts for candidates for office, church leaders, and parents, because as I have always said, if we don't have the right people in office, traction is next to impossible. With this expansion, we will become the most formidable public policy organization in the region, not a flashy or bloated one, but the most effective one. Tonight, I ask you to stand with me boldly and without fear to proclaim Christ. I ask you to walk with us in prayer and to keep us at the tip of the spear in the fight so that one day in our state, abortion in all its forms is a distant memory, marriage between a man and a woman is enshrined in law and culture, the innocence and dignity of children, born and preborn, is protected everywhere, the right to live and practice our Christian faith is never questioned. In closing, let me share a verse from Ephesians 6 that inspires me each and every day. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything to stand, stand firm then with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, and pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the saints. Thank you. And now it's our privilege to honor the legislators of the year. These are the champions for all the bills that we've passed this year, and without them, none of this legislation we promote would get passed into law. So I want to take a few minutes and honor these leaders and thank them for their work. So first of all, we have Representative Neal Jackson.
Honored just to be in the room with Tammy Fitzgerald. She is the best of the best. My thought of being honored as the Legislature of the Year by NC Values is this. Revelations 4, at the judgment seat of Christ, we are given our rewards. And what do? We cast them at Jesus' feet because we're not worthy, He is. And very honestly, that's the way I feel about receiving Legislator of the Year from NC Values, because quite honestly, they do all the work. And let me just give you an example. 2 days ago, leadership calls and says, hey, Neal, we want to run the defund Planned Parenthood bill. And I was like, okay. They said, we want Dean Arp to run it. We want you to run it. I was like, okay. And then I called Tammy. I was like, hey, I'm running defund Planned Parenthood, and all I know is Planned Parenthood is bad. So you got to help me out. I cannot praise them enough. They help us completely, and I'm honored beyond words to be associated.
We have some awards somewhere. I'm not sure why they didn't make their way up to the stage, but we'll take care of it later. Next, we want to honor Representative Jennifer Balkcom. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone being here and supporting Tammy. I will say you cannot do some of the things I want to do without some help from staff. And Mary Sema, you know I'm talking about you. But yes, it's funny when you have a heart for wanting to do it anyways, and then you have support coming in to tell us how to do it so it can pass. It's amazing. I can't thank every one of you who support them enough, and I can't thank you enough, Tammy. Thank you for all that you do.
And next we have Representative Jonathan Almond.
Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight and the support that you give to NC Values. I look around the room, and it's such an incredible thing that I'm even standing up here. God's given me the opportunity to be a part of this journey, and Tammy has such an amazing team. And I think that the thing that we can take most from this is that God's calling people off the couch, and He's putting them in the game, and it's time to be bold. And with people like Tammy supporting us in the legislature, we can make those things happen. So thank you, Tammy, for all your hard work.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think you can see why they got awarded as Legislator of the Year. The list of bills on your table that you've looked at, these three legislators were heavily involved in those, and so we want to thank them for all this great legislation this year. Now, it is our privilege to have with us tonight Dan Bishop. And hang on one second. Yeah, that's for sure. So Dan Bishop currently serves as the Deputy Director of the Office of Management and Budget under President Donald J. Trump. He previously served in the U.S. House of Representatives for 3 terms from 2019 to 2025, and as a North Carolina State Senator from 2017 to 2019, and then as a member of the North Carolina House of Representatives from 2015 to 2017, and as a member of the Mecklenburg County Commission from 2006 to 2009. Before leaving the practice of law to enter Congress, Dan was a business litigator for nearly 30 years. He earned his law degree from UNC Chapel Hill, where he graduated with high honors, top 10, and served on the North Carolina Law Review. He's been married to his wife, Jo, for 26 years. I think it's 26. And they have a son, Jack, who recently graduated from UNC Law School. Dan is credited with being the lead author of North Carolina's Public Facilities Privacy and Security Act, commonly called the Bathroom Bill, which prohibited transgender people from using public restrooms other than those of their biological sex. He was right then, and he is right now. Don't ask me, 80% of the public agrees. He was just a little ahead of his time. During this period, I came to admire greatly his brilliant legal mind, his spine of steel, and his dogged determination to do what is right, no matter what the cost is. Dan spoke at this celebration last year when he was running for North Carolina Attorney General. Unfortunately, or fortunately, you might say, God had other plans for him, bigger plans, where he could actually make a much bigger difference in helping to restore our country to sanity and greatness. Since being in the West Wing of the White House, Dan has participated in some of the most historic wins in our history. I hope he'll talk about some of them tonight. He's at the tip of the spear of all the reforms going on at the federal level. Please welcome my friend, Dan Bishop.
You know, Tammy, great wisdom spoken. One of the worst things you can do as a politician is be ahead of your time, right? Isn't that right, Jim Blaine? Jim Blaine, who got me through my successful campaigns, and my unsuccessful ones are all my fault. Thank you, Tammy, for the invitation. It is marvelous to be here with you. I've enjoyed speaking to folks I haven't known, and it's great to see a number of folks who are good friends. I give a lot fewer speeches these days. But I'm delighted to have an opportunity to share with you my experience as the Deputy Director of the Office of Management and Budget in the second administration of Donald J. Trump. I spend, for that reason, a lot of time away from Pinehurst, where Joe and I now live. We moved into a new house down there in July, and my honey-do list is very long, but I am honored and I am fascinated to be serving the most decisive, change-oriented, consequential president of my lifetime. And it is an unexpected privilege to be the deputy to Russ Vogt at OMB. When Russ offered to recommend me for nomination, he described, I knew something about OMB, I didn't know nearly what I know now, but he described OMB as the president's air traffic control system, the principal tool that the president has for exerting control over the modern bureaucracy. OMB, as some have said, is the most powerful agency you've never heard of. You know that it designs the president's budget recommendations to Congress, but much, much more. It administers the budgeted funds. It can suspend them to agencies across the government. It can conduct data calls, drills we call them, to obtain information from administrative agencies across the federal government. Issues guidance on administrative policy for all agencies. We have at OMB the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, OIRA, which is the clearinghouse for all regulation, all in the administrative state, all of the regulation that is passed and is promulgated by agencies across the federal government. It drives the president's regulatory reform. Many of you will recall the president in his first term said that he wanted to eliminate two regulations for every new regulation that was adopted. Well, he accomplished that. And then he said that was so easy that this time he wanted to make it different. He wanted to say we're going to eliminate 10 regulations for every regulation adopted. Well, I'm pleased to report that under Russ Vought and Jeff Clark at OIRA, to this point in the administration, we've eliminated 30 regulations for every regulation adopted. The M in OMB is for management. There's a deputy director for management. We house the Office of Federal Financial Management, managing all the financial operations across the agencies, the Office of Federal Chief Information Officer, the Office of Federal Procurement Policy, where we are engaged in a sweeping reform of federal procurement. If anybody's ever been in touch that across their lives, there's something called the Federal Acquisition Regulations, FAR. They are being sweepingly reformed in order to make government more efficient in the way that it buys, the biggest buyer in the world, and that's happening at OMB. But on top of a full plate at OMB, Russ wears two additional hats. Russ is the acting director of the CFPB, the Commercial Financial Protection Bureau, and he is the acting administrator of USAID, and I'm detailed to both of those as well. It's hard to keep up with Russ Vought. If you haven't heard of or noticed Russ, Trump's budget guy, the left definitely has. Last Friday, ProPublica termed him the shadow president. On Saturday, Political said he was the king of the shutdown. Quote, has assembled an army of program cutters and veteran Washington hands. In an administration full of disruptors, Russ Vought is a different beast. And PBS called him Point Man. No part of the administration more reflects the distinct difference between Trump 45, an outsider beset from the beginning by that extraordinary Obama plot to hobble his administration, and Trump 47. We are devoted to the task of implementing the president's policies effectively, quickly, and making every tool of governance available to him to do the voters' will. Deep state resistance is not defining this administration, and the president is hitting on all cylinders and addressing a host of our country's challenges all at the same time. OMB is especially important in facilitating the president's reassertion of authorities of the executive that have atrophied over the course of our many years. In fact, there are some things that you and I have come to expect as normal that really aren't. After all, the first sentence of Article 2 of the Constitution says that the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States. The media and the leftists say that the crazy right wing has this idea, this theory of a unitary executive. Well, read Article 2. You don't have to go far. It's in sentence 1. But there's been a media mantra, and there still is today, that some of the most potent parts of the federal bureaucracy are to be independent. And indeed, Congress has, over the years, created more independent agencies than I ever knew. President Trump vowed that he would change that, and at OMB, we're providing him the tools to do it. OMB alerted President Trump to an opportunity to save $3 billion by declining an all or none approach to extending federal expenditures that are based on emergency declarations. It's one of the million budget gimmicks that appropriators in Congress have developed to force the president to continue all such spending across fiscal years as the price for continuing any. Lawyers at OMB carefully reviewed and reinterpreted appropriations language, surprised everyone in Washington, and freed the president to save $3 billion by being liberated from that trap. OMB prepared and proposed to the president, and he proposed to Congress, the first successful spending rescission passed by Congress in many years. You may have heard less about this, but we also have developed for the president, and he proposed a sizable, intended, and so far successful pocket rescission, still in litigation, in which a rescission is proposed to Congress by the president 45 days from the end of the fiscal year, and it takes automatic effect because of the way Congress wrote the Impoundment Control Act when it was attempting in the 70s, in the weakest point of the presidency after President Nixon was in trouble, to strip from the president the age-old practice of presidential impoundment. Well, they wrote it that way, and we figured out how to use it in a way they didn't anticipate. So that's another $5 billion in wasteful and counterproductive spending that we've eliminated. OMB has also laid the intellectual groundwork for the president at a time of his choosing to deploy presidential impoundment, as did Thomas Jefferson, Ulysses Grant, Harry Truman, and other presidents all across the American history, to withhold even more inefficient and wasteful and obsolete spending. And now, in the Democrat shutdown, which seems likely to become the longest on record, we are maximizing. Someone said to me tonight, I don't even know if anybody's noticed the shutdown. That's right. That's because at OMB we are maximizing the president's options to further reduce and entirely eliminate pockets of the bureaucracy that do not effectively serve the American people in the course of the shutdown. And we are maximizing his ability to pay the troops, to pay law enforcement for as long as possible. So that President Trump is not required to knuckle under to demands from Democrats to provide health care to illegals that the American people do not want, and to spend another $1.5 trillion as the price for reopening the government. All of this has led to the memes dubbing Russ the Grim Reaper, and the president himself refers to him as Darth Vader in a very affectionate way, among other memes. And beyond those highlights of OMB, I want to say that serving as deputy director entails a number of very interesting personal experiences. I represent Russ in the weekly White House Policy Council Leaders meeting with the Chief of Staff for Policy, Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, Stephen Miller. And we have biweekly, roughly, meetings with a deputy small group in the Situation Room on national security issues that are led by the Deputy National Security Advisor. And I have, on a number of occasions, had the pleasure of meeting the President in the Oval Office in the Cabinet Room. And I've got to tell you, if you can only imagine, it is always an extraordinary experience. And one that I did not have occasion to experience in my 5 years in Congress. The first occasion that happened, the president had his trade team in the room, his fiscal team in the room. There was a number of business people that came and visited. Governor DeSantis and his wife came and visited. And the president learned at some point that I had not been in the Oval Office before. He says, Dan, have you seen the Declaration of Independence that we have? And he said, Walt! So he calls Walt in and takes me back. This is before it was in the Oval Office. You've seen the pictures now. It's in the Oval Office behind curtains. But the president had me go back into this office. I think it was the little office that became infamous by Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. But more importantly, the Declaration of Independence print is on the wall. And then we came back in, and he pointed out the golden cherubs and the eaves over the doorway that he had provided. He says, you know, you can't fake paint gold that looks like real gold. And he had Walt bring in some gold emblems that he has in fact subsequently placed on the diplomatic mantelpiece, you know, behind the diplomatic chairs. And but I'm telling you, I've never seen anybody in my life who has the capacities of this president to do as much as he does relentlessly. He outworks everyone around him. And as I said at the outset, he is a president who is making change and keeping his promises at a dizzying pace. And I want you to consider just the few that came to my mind as I was assembling my comments. Our budget proposal, the president's budget proposal in the spring, proposed reducing discretionary spending 23%, $160 billion, framing a national conversation around the president's vow to end woke and weaponized bureaucracy that turns against the American people and to end waste, fraud, and abuse. The one big, beautiful bill, President's signature legislation passed under reconciliation rules by the Congress in July, made permanent the tax cuts that juiced the economy when they were originally passed in 2017 and prevented the largest tax increase in history to 90% of Americans. And also contained, a lot of people don't know this, the largest waste, fraud, and abuse reform of mandatory spending ever, and the first change of any kind of that sort in the last 25 years. The congressional rescission that I mentioned earlier saved $9 billion and finally ended funding for the deeply leftist Corporation for Public Broadcasting, an objective that's been pursued since Reagan. And fundamentally reshaped foreign aid so that we're not spending the American taxpayers' money in ways that are counterproductive to American interests and damaging to people all across the globe. I spent a lot of time in Congress on the Committee on Homeland Security and on the Committee on the Judiciary with my colleagues from the Democratic side telling me that if we would just pass that bill that President Trump said we shouldn't pass, we could fix border security. The president fixed border security in a week, and it didn't require any change of law. As he said, it only required a new president. He's restored law and order in D.C. in a couple of months, so successfully that he's rolling it out to cities. The latest point, which has become the latest point of determined interference by federal judges across the country. And you need to know, if you're not keeping count, 42 temporary injunctions so far by federal judges have been stayed or vacated by appellate courts. 42. That means, and there are a lot more that have been issued, obviously, but actually that's about 80% of the ones that have been issued, which represents an unseemly, unconstitutional interference of a woke and weaponized judiciary in the powers of the President of the United States. India and Pakistan at peace, Gaza ceasefire, liberation of hostages, continuing to pursue peace in Ukraine, new sanctions announced today on a recalcitrant Russia, just 10 months and just a partial list. Ladies and gentlemen, we saw this weekend much made of the No Kings protest. And I thought the president handled that very nicely. But here's the thought I have about it. The No Kings protests are a grudging acknowledgement that the second Trump administration is moving. And the cultural Marxists, the election cheaters, the weaponizers of law enforcement and intelligence authorities are on the defensive like never before. President Trump is using every executive prerogative to restore law, the economy, and American culture. I've said to you that for me, serving this president in this way is unexpected. And Tammy illustrated some of that in her comments. In fact, this moment for me, coming to be with you, thinking about the experience of what I've had occasion to witness and do this year, caps a highly improbable dozen years. It was in 2013 that I ran for the State House in that single term in which, working with Tammy Fitzgerald, well, I guess we first hit a roadblock in trying to advance a state Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and then we had the success of HB 2, which, of course, when I ran for Congress, I could see the gleam in the reporter's eye. We're going to kill this guy. He was the HB 2 guy? We were right then, Tammy, you're right. And subsequent events have borne it out. And I'm honored to have been involved in it. 2 elections to state senate, and in the second of those, in 2018, I appeared on the ballot with and endorsed then candidate for Congress, Dr. Mark Harris in Congressional District 9, now my successor. His 2018 victory was canceled by a partisan gamesmanship of the State Board of Election, and Joe and I entered the special election that was called and won that. With no prior plan to do so, suddenly I was in Congress. 3 elections in Congress, and then I ran to be a law and order attorney general, which I think North Carolina still desperately needs, by the way. Had I not decided to depart Congress and embark on the run for attorney general, it would have been impossible for me to leave the House to serve President Trump due to the slim majority there. Mark Harris is doing a lot better job in Congress than I ever did, and I'm glad he's there. But all this dozen years, all of these moments, I would not trade away for anything. All of it began several years after I had declared myself finished with politics after having served a frustrating 4 years as a county commissioner in Bluing, Mecklenburg County. Perhaps interesting to you, it certainly is something I reflect on as I stand here tonight. The first step back for me was the same time I met Tammy Fitzgerald, when we joined efforts to help lobby for and pass the state constitutional amendment to save the institution of marriage. And that turns out to have been the spark that led to a change of direction for me, that led to my current office roughly 300 feet from the Resolute desk. But I certainly do not believe it was chance. Neither do I believe that about the presidency of Donald Trump. Last November, when the late polls told me I was likely to lose my race for Attorney General, I thought for a bit about what should be the last words I was likely to speak as a candidate for public office. And the answer to me came quickly, and it was as clear as a bell. Here's what I said then, and I'll say it to you again today. I praise a mighty God whose plan is perfect and whose victory is certain. I proclaim Christ Jesus crucified and risen and his message of repentance and grace for all. And I ask his blessing on our state and on our nation, on the efforts of the North Carolina Values Coalition, and on each and every one of you. God bless you.
Thank you again, Congressman, now Deputy Director Bishop. That was fabulous. Thank you so much. My name is Joseph Backholm, and I have the pleasure of serving as a government affairs advisor here for the North Carolina Values Coalition. And in our last few moments together, I'm going to help us have a conversation, because this is really, we call it a celebration, and it is in many ways it's a huddle, if you like the team analogy. It's also kind of a family gathering. And I hope one of the things that you've seen tonight is the various team members that it takes for all of these things to happen. And you've heard from courageous legislators who run for office to lead in the state house. And of course, the team that Tammy has who helps them and helps you get information. But there is another group of people that we're going to highlight now who are the people who confront bad policies in their real lives. And then they need something to do, and they need someone to help them, and they have stories. And very often you hear stories about people who, well, something bad has happened, but I really don't want to take the risk associated with being part of the change. A lot of people make that choice, but the people in front of you now have not made that choice. They've said, this is wrong, and not only do I recognize it's wrong, I'm willing to do something about that. So our three friends here tonight, we have Evie Edwards, and we have Prisha Mosley, and we have Janet Peterson. And they're going to tell you, they have all come into contact essentially with the trans revolution in various ways. And they're going to tell you how that's happened in their lives. And Prisha, I think we're going to start with you. So tell our friends here what it is that you experienced that kind of led you to where you are today.
Yeah, hi, thank you for the introduction. My name is Prisha Mosley. I am 27 years old now, and I'm a mother to a beautiful stepdaughter and a wonderful son. But there was a time in my life where I wasn't sure I was going to be able to conceive or have a baby or anything like that at all. In fact, after meeting or looking back, I wonder if my doctors just never wondered if I would want a normal life as far as kids and a family. When I was a minor living in North Carolina, I fell into trans ideology online. I was in harmful online spaces being affirmed in my eating disorder with a group of other girls when our online group was found by trans activists who told us that we couldn't eat because we were born in the wrong bodies. And I was one of the girls who believed them. And when I brought this to my doctor, despite years of doing the opposite of affirming me in my eating disorder, they affirmed my gender identity. And I was immediately put on testosterone, and then a year later had both of my breasts amputated. This happened in the state of North Carolina 10 years ago. Things have gotten much worse since then, but luckily there have been people like NC Values, Tammy Fitzgerald, and the other two people on the stage with me who have stepped up. I personally have been traveling across the country to testify for and against legislator referring to so-called gender-affirming care, which is really sex-destroying harm. And yeah, I've most notably for this worked on HB 805, which Tammy Fitzgerald and NC Values championed, which among many things extends the statute of limitations for detransitioners like me to be able to hold our doctors accountable. Thank you.
And Prisha, there's something also remarkable about you, because you're a pioneer of sorts, because you have actually gone to court to try to seek justice against a medical establishment that did this to you. If you could, very quickly, just tell people, what's the status of those efforts?
Gosh, so I was actually deposed for the first time a year ago. It was very difficult. I definitely think the lawyers were trying to just harass me into dropping my case. They barely wanted to talk about what my doctors did and just wanted to talk about like random childhood trauma and stuff to make me upset. But I continued to fight. They deposed me for 4 days plus 1 hour. And I've gone through hearings and giving evidence. Like they wanted everything from every diary I've ever written since I was 12. And I've been doing all of this, like fighting so hard, just being honest because I have the truth on my side. And even after the passage of HB 805, which extended the statute of limitations, as I said, a Democrat judge dismissed my case and then retired 2 days later. But I am appealing to the higher courts of North Carolina. I have appealed. And
so this story, if we want childhood mutilation to end, and we do, when there are real consequences for those who make a lot of money doing that to children, that's when it stops. But in order for that to happen, you need very brave people to say, no, this is wrong and I'm willing to defend myself. And you need people willing to come along, very brave people, and say, we will help you defend yourself. And that's how you end up bringing justice to this situation. So Prisha, we are so grateful for your willingness to do that. The trans revolution has gained the kind of currency it has culturally because it's convinced a lot of people that there's really no consequences. This is just about people being free to be who they want. And part of what we're doing tonight and what the culture is discovering is that, in fact, there are very serious consequences. Now, Evie Edwards doesn't have the same story as Prisha, but you have encountered this in a different way. Why don't you tell us about that?
Sure. I'm Evie Edwards. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. One might even say I'm a rehabilitated liberal. I did spend 10 years in Chapel Hill. In 2018, AmeriCorps Fellow, you name it.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. In 2018, I was out in LA. I was a Masters track world cycling silver medalist, and the woman that beat me, I think she was from the Netherlands. She went on to compete against a man that we all knew was a man, and this was the first man to ever compete at a world championship, to get a female world record and win a female gold medal. Now, my friends there, we all knew that instantly that this was wrong, and we started speaking very loudly around the world, wondering if this was ever going to change. How big was this going to become? How many people would this affect? How deep would it go? At what ages would we say boys don't belong in girls' sports? I'm a mother. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and she's a phenomenal athlete. She's a black belt in Taekwondo. She's on a top soccer team. She plays volleyball, and she's also, like me, a nationally ranked cyclist. I have a son who's 11, and he definitely knows the difference and the definition of a boy and a girl. And I think that we all come to this story at different places, but when we look at the news, when we're listening to Raleigh Gaines, who is one of the plaintiffs that my organization, the Independent Council on Women's Sports, she's one of our plaintiffs because we are championing the lawsuit against the NCAA. It's a huge legal battle and huge wins in North Carolina, and much to the design, support, and unbelievable confidence of Tammy Fitzgerald to take a chance on me, a liberal, to come and help support the Save Women's Sports bill in North Carolina, which failed the first time, and then we were unbelievably successful the second time. And I am so proud to say that both my daughter and I were introduced on the House and the Senate floor when that bill was denied, the law was vetoed, and our beautiful legislature in North Carolina passed that into law.
So, Evie, from the perspective of a female athlete, how much does it matter that there are people in state houses helping the athletes?
Oh, it's unbelievable. I mean, we're seeing across the country right now, we're battling volleyball teams, basketball teams. We're having to overly scrutinize women. When we have sex-based testing, when we understand that there are rules, not just federally, which we're so grateful that we've had the executive order of Donald Trump, but we are still battling this on a state-by-state level. North Carolina is ahead of the game. Tammy has even looked into a lot of the rules that maybe we didn't think about, the laws. When we have other states that bring their championships, their teams here to North Carolina, our female athletes aren't protected. We're looking at the ramifications of Minnesota, which just yesterday at their Supreme Court, state level, they have sided with a man in, of all things, weightlifting. When we don't have well-researched, defined logic laws, when we come to the problem with a solution that isn't foundationally sound, we end up losing some of the best cases we have for our females. Boys do not belong in girl sports. Females should be protected. Single-sex spaces are important, and I'm so proud to have been a part of NC Values and the hard work of Tammy's entire team.
Thank you. And as we all know, this is a movement that is not just interested in getting its way as individuals, but in changing hearts and minds. And Janet Peterson, with the Pavement Education Project, this is how you have kind of encountered this issue, is seeing the various ways that this ideology has found its way into books for children and into school libraries in our school curriculum. Tell us about that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm a retired teacher. I retired in 2019, and for many years, I had no children that I knew about that questioned their gender, thought they were born in the wrong body, or had any difficulties. But a lot of the children, in fact, at least 10 children that I've taught that are in high school or just beyond, have decided they were born in the wrong bodies. How did this happen? How did this happen? Somewhere along the line, somebody planted some seeds of doubt within the minds of those innocent children. And we're not happy about it. So our team, the Pavement Education Project, kind of started on a whim when we were challenged to read and find to see if there was any inappropriate literature in schools. And what we found was erotica at first, and then we kept finding LGBTQIA curriculum, and then we kept seeing it grow, and now what we see are books that are coming in to the library, available for children to check out, that talk about going through transition. They may be as young as 10 years old. They've already started on the hormones. They're looking at having surgery, even with what is going on the national level and what we have with 805. At least parents now have been empowered. No longer can the pronoun issue be kept secret from parents. That's real important. If a child is struggling, the parents need to know. And this House Bill 805 helps to ensure that. They also ensure that parents have access to the library. And you can go in and check and see. You can put in a search for transgender, and you can see how many books are in your child's library that are available for their checkout. We still are fighting the battle. We had Banned Books Week earlier this month. This month, whether you knew it or not, President Obama had declared that October is LGBTQIA History Month. And so now we're finding history books in children's libraries in the public school. So the fight's not over. We're very thankful for Tammy and her team for helping out with House Bill 805, so parents have an opportunity to look for themselves and opt their children out of curriculum and of lessons and materials that are in conflict with their religious beliefs. And trust me, they're there. I have to say, for my profession, I think many teachers go into it and have no idea the ramifications of what they're reading, saying, or doing. They're planting seeds innocently, but there are ramifications. Every time that they affirm by allowing a child to go in a different bathroom or choose their pronouns, and they've not talked with parents, they are affirming that child. And the research has shown if you do social transition on children, 80 to 85% of those children will go ahead and have the medical surgery later on. If you choose to try to work with those children by offering counseling, by offering other services, you can avoid that. But in some districts like Wake County, It's a challenge when you have people on the school board who say Gender Queer is one of their, favorite books. Their book club read it and enjoyed it. So we're up against a lot of challenges, and we're very thankful that we have fine legislators, some that are here tonight, and Tammy and Mary, who continue to work on putting forth legislation that's going to make what's happening in public schools more transparent for parents and create a safer environment for our children. Get rid of the distractions. Let's get back and get focused on academics instead of trying to figure out what your identity is.
For those of us who may not personally struggle with gender identity questions or may not be female athletes, the reality of what's going on in our children or our grandchildren's school is the most personal thing that will affect our family. And that's probably the widest reach, is what ideology is taking place. So as you can see here, this is not a small issue. It does affect everyone, and this is a team sport in responding to this. So please thank our panel, not just for their presence tonight, but for their courage. Thank you.